Ross Chapman. Now, we're going to start you, Ross. You tell me when you're ready. Come close and tell me when we'll do the countdown for you. Shall we start the countdown?
Yes, please.
3, 2, 1.
Well, let me introduce you to John Grubb Richardson. 1845 is remembered as the year when the potato blight came to Ireland in a big way. But something else was happening in this locality. John Richardson and his brothers from the Lisburn area bought a burned out mill in Bessbrook that same year, coming in on the crest of a wave that was the Industrial Revolution. He was a blow-in, just like several of us here on this stage this evening. He chose Bessbrook because of its local assets which could be harnessed: the water supply and the Camla River, the granite for building the mill and the houses, the flax grown in the area, and a thick population. Yes, that's the unfortunate adjective he used to describe, meaning plenty of people skilled in linen processes. He also chose Bessbrook because it was away from any big town, allowing him, as he said, to control our people and do them good in every sense. John Richardson is remembered as a businessman, and such was the commercial success of the Richardson linen enterprise that John was able to buy out his brothers after some years and become the sole owner. He was a shrewd man, which was shown by his ability to turn a halfpenny into a penny, and being able to recruit and inspire managers who were both dependable and gifted. Linen at that time was an ideal industry. It used local resources and was labour intensive. There was an export market far and wide. Fine linen from Bessbrook graced the tables in the Savoy Hotel in London and on transatlantic liners. It was clearly profitable. Linen is a quality fabric, but it took a long time to complete through its umpteen processes, and it took a long time to wear out. The excellence of Bessbrook linen came to be recognised, so that it was said it could be confidently bought in the dark. The benefits to Newry from this enterprise, only 3 miles away, was work for up to 4,000 people, steady trade through the port, and then later the spread of the linen industry to Newry, and that ingenious Bessbrook to Newry hydroelectric tram. John Grubb Richardson is also remembered as a social engineer, and coupled with his business prowess was his vision for social improvement. He saw that the 2 curses of Ireland were strong drink and religious animosity. What action do you think he took on those 2 enduring problems? Well, in Bessbrook, he insisted that there was, and still is, no pub, and so crime was minimal and there was no need for the police. Our fellow men would not be capable of committing outrages without the stimulus of whisky, said he. Further, with no pub and plentiful employment, there was no poverty, so no need of a pawn shop, and Bestbrook became known as the village without the 3 Ps. No pub, no police, no pawn shop. The police did come later, about 50 years after the founding of the industrial village. Sectarian bitterness was addressed in these ways: by having one school under the national school system, with himself as manager, and with Catholic as well as Protestant teachers. It sounds like early integrated education. Again, by providing sites for various places of worship. The story is that John himself sat in the front row when the chapel was opened in 1875. And again, by providing jobs in the mill for all, regardless of religious affiliation. However, the Richardsons were quite aware of their failure to promote many Catholics as foremen and managers. Now, in order to provide a wholesome village environment better than he had seen in Belfast, he arranged for sturdy housing, a dispensary, bathhouse, allotment gardens, convalescent home, sports facilities, village hall, library, and a savings bank. He used his paternal control to create what became known as the model village, and this brought some fame to the area. But it was not utopia. He had his critics. And one test of greatness is to ask, how did he cope with criticism? Did he learn anything or adapt to change? I think he did. And among those who made protests were the employees. For example, in 1872, long before trades unions, 350 men who had one of the most unpleasant jobs went on strike for 2 weeks. They were not starved back to work. Some compromises were made and the strike was settled. Then the tenants. John Richardson had become an extensive landlord, owning maybe 12 town lands, thousands of acres. There was often friction over rents and leases. Yet, against his own personal interests, he supported Gladstone's land reforms, and his son James served as a Westminster MP, helping to bring changes which led to tenant ownership of their farms. The Catholic Church. The parish priest, Canon Charles Quinn, epitomised the new assurance and resurgence of the Catholic Church in Ireland at that time. He was mentally and physically powerful and was the first in Bestbrook to stand up to the Richardsons. It was said that in Bestbrook at that time there were 2 popes, Pope Quinn and Pope Richardson. The crux of the dispute was over the right to have Catholic schools in the village. Richardson thwarted this for several years until legislative changes removed his veto. Later, some mutual understanding developed between them. The fame of Bestbrook was far-reaching, so much so that visitors came to investigate, the likes of George Cadbury, the chocolate manufacturer, and including critics like George Bernard Shaw. After his visit, Shaw famously and caustically gave this bleak comment on the sober, thrifty ideals of the village. Bestbrook Book is a place where I am told the people never swear or get drunk. But to me, all of them look as if they'd like to do both. They have a swan on the pond nearby, and to me that swan must spend its time wishing it could drown itself. Perhaps this tells us more about Shaw than about Richardson. And what about John Richardson's home life? 170 years ago, both rich and poor knew the risks of childbirth. His first wife died at the birth of their second child. And he later wrote these words, "I have been greatly blessed by the influence of women, 2 superior wives who were like angels to me." He suffered from occasional mental breakdowns and was restored by the feminine touch. Alongside every great man is a What books did he read? Certainly one well-known, well-thumbed volume shaped many of his attitudes and tempered his ambitions. He read in that book of one who gave a warning to the rich man about the camel trying to go through the eye of a needle. That good book also told him, "Woe unto you when all men speak well of you." Praise and flattery had to be faced down. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, for the purposes of this event tonight, you must make some decisions, and whoever takes the laurels, let's agree that all the candidates were splendid characters whom we do admire and might well emulate. We can ask ourselves, had we been living at their time, would we have achieved 1% of what they did? Back to my candidate, John Grubb. He's a man I would like to have met. If you want to see his monument, take a walk through Bestbrook. Now, my friends, ask yourselves, does that man John press all the buttons?
Wonderful, wonderful.